Evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us and welcome to this webinar tonight about the North Union Project. Again, my name is Cindy Chan Rubik. I'm an Assistant Commissioner with the Department of Planning and Development. We had actually 500 participants register for this webinar, which is great, and it is being recorded and live streamed on YouTube, on DPD's YouTube channel. And we've set up a web page for this project at www.chicago.gov/North Union. And this includes information on the project, as well as a place where the public can submit comments or questions. In terms of the 500 participants who registered, just for your information, 60% of them responded that they live in the Near North community area, 47% responded that they work in the Near North community area, and 95% visit this area often, which is great. In terms of the meeting format, we can go to the next slide, please. We will start with identifying who's on the call with us. Next slide, please. Thank you. We'll start with identifying who's on this webinar with us. Alderman Burnett and Alderman Hopkins will welcome you with a few words, and then we will have JDL present their team as well as present their proposal. And for the rest of the webinar, we'll do some Q&A, and we'll end at 7:30. So for the Q&A, we are going to start with some representatives we have from the Near North Unity Program, as well as River North Residents Association. Then we'll go to the questions that we received in advance of the meeting today, and then we'll answer the questions we receive live through the Q&A box in the webinar. So if you're watching and live streaming from YouTube, you can also submit your question there, as DPD is monitoring those questions as well. And we'll do our best to answer the questions during the webinar. With me today are staff from the planning department. We have the project manager, Emily Thrun. We have Noah Zafraniak, and we have Kevin Barnes. From the Department of Housing, we have Ricardo Lopez and Justin Root. And from CDOT, Department of Transportation, we have Bill Higgins and Karen Lagulia. We also have a few community representatives, as I said earlier. We have Reverend Blakey and Michelle Drzezinski from the Near North Unity Program. And we have Mike Riordan and Susan Morrow from the River North Residents Association. So the planned development boundary for this project overlaps two wards. The part that is being presented tonight that is being proposed to be redeveloped is by JDL, overlaps the 27th ward, that's Alderman Burnett's ward. And then the part of Moody Bible Campus, which is also within the planned development boundary, overlaps Alderman Hopkins' ward. So I'm going to hand it over to Alderman Burnett, who is going to say a few words first, and then we'll have Alderman Hopkins speak as well.
Thank you very much, Cynthia. First of all, we want to thank God for the opportunity to be here. We're so grateful that we still have folks with this pandemic going on that are still looking at doing development in our city. So that's a blessing, whether it's approved or not. Coincidentally, I happen to be one of those, I can't say young people, but once upon a time I was a young man and I grew up in the Cabrini Green area, and I actually got exposed to Christianity by the Moody Bible students taking me inside their places to play pool and bumper pool and encourage us to learn more about Christ, right? So Moody Bible has been in the community, and that was over 50 years ago. Moody Bible has been in this community for a long time. They've invested a lot in the community as far as trying to help people in our neighborhood. They've was in this neighborhood when no one else wanted to move to this neighborhood. They were there. So we appreciate them, and we appreciate any opportunities that they can get to do something different with their property. You know, as some folks may or may not know, that most of the students who go to Moody Bible do not pay tuition. So I'm sure whatever happens with this property probably will go for tuition to build up more Christians and more ministers and folks that get involved in communities all over the city as they do now. As far as this development goes, how we deal with developments in our ward, generally we send them to the local community organization. In this instance, is mostly the of Unity program. We also work with the Neighbors of River North and also with the Old Town Merchants and Residents Association. Then we generally have a community meeting and try to make sure that the people who are directly affected by the development have a voice also. Um, Planning saw fit to broaden this to take in more people throughout this area because it's a large development and it will have an impact on many communities because of the density, the traffic, and all of the other things possibly. Um, some of the things that I just need to let folks know, and people who have been around me for 26 years know that I generally start my meetings the same way. I tell folks that I do not make decisions based on views. I'm a strong advocate for affordable housing, and I try and make sure people from the community have an opportunity to work on 100 of construction jobs that are going to be on the site. So those are my standard things. So with that, I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to work in coordination with Alderman Brian Hopkins. I know he have residents right on across the street from this proposal, and they're very concerned, and that's understandable. Although they used to be my residents first, Brian, before they was yours. But anyway, that's another story. but but at the same time, we want to hear the broader community. So I'm happy to listen to everyone. This is a large development, so it may take several meetings before we can come up to a final rendition of what's going to be built here. So thank you very much, and I look forward to hearing from everyone.
Thank you, Alderman Burnett. Alderman Hopkins, do you want to say a few words? Alderman Hopkins, you're not muted, so I'm not sure if there's an issue with your audio. All right, well, we'll try to figure that out. And then maybe we'll, when we work on fixing your audio, then we can have you say a few words maybe after JDL's presentation. So why don't we get started with Jim's presentation. I do want to just point out to everyone that this master plan development project will set the framework for the future redevelopment of the site as it relates to the zoning regulation. So this master PD identifies some of the big picture components for the site, for example, roadway improvements, development parcels, publicly accessible open spaces, but also the design of the vertical development, including the allowable uses, the maximum square footages, the maximum heights, and maximum number of units, as well as parking spaces, as well as the building shape and facade expression. So Jim Lessinger.
Cindy, am I still muted?
Oh, yes. Great. Now it's working. I'm glad.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll just hold the microphone then.
Please go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt. And thank you for the introduction. And thank you to my colleague, Alderman Burnett. I just want to repeat something that Alderman Burnett said at the beginning of his remarks, where he expressed some gratitude for the fact that we have a development proposal to consider during these pandemic times, which has really decimated our economy. I agree that it's somewhat of a relief that there is private investment out there that still wants to come to our city and spend their money. So we are obligated as a city, as residents, and as elected officials to consider it. We're not obligated to just give them what they're asking for. It doesn't work that way, but we are obligated to receive their request, give it its due consideration, approach this with an open mind. And I know there's a variety of opinions. I've reviewed all the questions, and there's many of them that we've received, and there will be many more as a result of this meeting tonight. The only thing I would ask for all of us is, again, that we approach this with an open mind. There's three things about this development proposal that I think raise the level of visibility and raise the level of public scrutiny that are indicated for this. And the first is, frankly, the sheer size of this. This is a relatively large parcel of real estate for a planned development. It's at the bigger end of the scale for what we typically see for a PD. So we have to take that into consideration. There's a lot to look at here. The second consideration is the fact that it is two different wards. As Alderman Burnett mentioned, most of the construction that's being proposed is in his ward, but the residents who are directly impacted are in my ward. So we have to work as a team, and Alderman Burnett and I have an outstanding relationship. I consider him not only a colleague, but a friend. We don't always agree on everything, but we work very well together. And I think we will work very well as a team to properly vet this as it goes through the Plan Commission and the City Council. And then the third consideration is the fact that the developer is seeking site plan approval for this entire project at one time. I can only assume it will be built in phases, because typically something this big, it gets built in phases, but he's putting his cards on the table right now. So there's no surprises 2 or 3 years from now. He's put the entirety of what he wants to do out there for public scrutiny. And I think that deserves an acknowledgement, because not every development that I've worked with has done it that way. Some of them kind of play hide the ball a little bit. And this particular company is not. They're showing us what they want to do. And that's the conversation starter. We take it from there. This developer, I can also tell you from experience, is willing to listen to the community and willing to make adjustments with his program based on community feedback. So that's what we're here for. You will most likely, during this process, move the needle to some degree on what the final approval is granted for this project. So I take my role seriously. I know you do as well, Alderman Burnett, and so does the planning department. And I'm sure all my residents who are here today are taking their role seriously as well in providing constructive community impact. So with that, I'm going to clip my microphone back on the desk and turn it back over to Cindy.
Thank you, Alderman Hopkins. Great. So actually, I'm going to hand it over to Jim Leshinger, who's from JDL, to continue with the presentation.
Great. Thank you, Cindy. Alderman Burnett, Alderman Hopkins, always appreciate your involvement and look forward to working with you throughout this process as we have to date. Thank you to DPD for all of their efforts. This is a master plan development. It's a new program. And we love being a test case, but it's actually really doesn't ask us to do much more than we always do, which is a lot more outreach and a lot more community involvement. So we're very happy to be part of this. I also want to echo what both aldermen have said. This is a very tough time for all of us. The last 8 months have been something that we could have never, ever thought we would experience. Just today, there were more regulations for many reasons that, we don't have a choice. And so, we need to look to the future, and we're very excited to do that. JDL Development, and I have with me as well on my team, I have Sophie Bidek and Jim Plunkard from HPA, Paul Shadle and Katie Jenke-Dale from DLA. We do this a little bit differently, and the lawyers can laugh in the background. We put, as Alderman Burnett or Hopkins said, we do put our cards on the table, and so we speak for ourselves. Our lawyers are certainly there to consult and make sure we follow the rules. But this is our project, and this is our life, and this is what we do, and we're very passionate about it. I'm also, for those of you that it's very difficult not seeing who's out there, because I love to see my neighbors. I am actually a neighbor. I live just 2 blocks from here. I have spent most of my life in this neighborhood. Alderman Burnett and I have joked a little bit. We grew up only a few blocks from each other. I was a little bit more advantaged than he was, but we were indeed very close neighbors. So I have a very vested interest in this whole neighborhood and the city of Chicago. On the screen, you see a number of projects, And these are important not only because they're projects that we're proud of, but the actual proximity of these projects to North Union is very interesting. We started in 2011 after the last horrible crisis, different crisis, but it was quite terrible, the 2008 crash. In 2011, we were fortunate enough to break ground on 1225 North Wells. Actually, it's written as well as West Wells, but I'm certain it's North Wells, where the Plum Market is located and 250 apartments. It was the first apartment built after the crash of 2008. So I have experience with building our way out and working with the city to become better and to grow and to prosper after times are tough. This is just at the north end of this site, just north of Division Street. We bookend it with the south end of Wells Street at Ontario, where you see 640 North Wells, completed, built in 2014. Immediately, also across the street from 1225, we built 211 West Scott. And then just 2 blocks east or 3 blocks east, in 2015, we broke ground, and a few years ago, completed number 9 Walton, which was we think a nice contribution to the city, a very unique collection of condos. Not a lot of condos being built downtown today, but we proved that you can build them and they will sell, and people do want to live in the city. And then the final screen is a building just 2.5, 3 blocks from this location, where we made a major commitment to the city, 812 apartments, a new Lifetime Fitness, Whole Foods, restaurants, retail spaces, office space. I don't think anybody is more committed to this neighborhood or has more to gain and to lose by what happens in these surroundings. Next slide. Thank you. So in following up on the theme of building toward a stronger Chicago, if not now, when? This is such a crucial time for Chicago, for the future of many major cities, but I only care about Chicago right now. I only care about Chicago all the time. I take it very personally. I obviously am active in the capital markets. If I had $1 for every time an institutional investor told me I'm not doing business in Chicago, I probably wouldn't need to raise any money to do this deal. It's very disappointing to me when I hear it. I take it very personally. I don't stop. I keep going. We are committed to building this project. The city desperately needs financial commitments. We need to show the world that Chicago is the best city in this country. We need to show investors. We need to show people that move here. I believe it. It's not just speak. It's real facts, and it's really, it's what JDL is all about. So I'm sorry. The two photos. You can go back, Sophie. I'm sorry. So as Sophie's flipping through some of the quick renderings of the buildings, and we don't want to focus as much on architecture tonight, because while that's important, there's a lot about what we're doing here is important, and there's plenty of time to study the buildings. There's quite an array of buildings being built here. In yellow, you see the existing and what will remain the Moody Bible campus. Moody Bible has been in this neighborhood for over a century. They're not leaving. As Alderman Burnett said, they have done a tremendous amount to help people in the surrounding area and even further out. And they are committed to staying here. They had opportunities to leave the city, to go to areas that might be less expensive and easier to work in, but they're committed here, and that's a really great thing for Chicago. And they've been a stalwart of this neighborhood forever. But they have excess land, and the land you see in purple is the land that we are working with and that we are talking about tonight. Again, Alderman Hopkins did mention, we have designed the entire site. We've spent almost a year because we don't feel we can come to you and discuss what we're going to build in the future without showing you what that is. It was a big undertaking. Actually, I think the city didn't believe us when we said we would do it, but we think it's the right way to do it. This isn't a master development like some. It's not a Lincoln Yards or a Michael Reese or some of the other 50, 100, 200 acre developments. It is 8 acres. It is big and it's prominent because it's an infill location, but it is small enough that we can design the entire project. And we want to show investors and we want to show our neighbors, what is this going to look like at the end of the day? So these are just some images. They're not inspirational. We've actually designed every building. We will share these images with everybody. Quite frankly, it's too much to talk about, but you will see varying sizes, varying shapes, varying designs, and there's a reason for that. We have fit the buildings where they belong. We've taken into account, what's happening on Wells Street, what's happening on Franklin Street, what belongs, what's staying, what's old, and we can run through that now. So this is a very important part of this process. What have we done? This isn't calling up the Department of Planning and saying, hey, can we get approval for this development? The alderman said it's okay. It's a major process. It starts off with the developer and the alderman having introductory meetings, getting to understand it. And then the Department of Planning, as you can see, starting in March, has been working on this project full time, working with us, pushing us, pulling us, asking us to change things, telling us who we have to go meet with. We actually typically reach out to all of our neighbors. We don't need anybody to tell us to do that because, as I said, I'm also a neighbor, so I know how it feels. In this case, it's a little unusual. There aren't a lot of immediate neighbors. This has been a pretty much vacant site for many, many years, actually forever. And so we do have a significant neighbor, Park Chestnut, who's located immediately next door. And as you can see, we've had a couple of meetings with them. We've been open to questions. We have been trying to be very sensitive to their concerns. As I said, they are the most, prominent and proximate neighbor. But we also met with 30 West Oak, and we've talked to other local buildings. Some of them are apartment building owners. And certainly we've met with the neighborhood groups. And NUP has reviewed this, as well as RNRA. We've actually had 2 meetings with RNRA. They've scrutinized it and questioned it. And all these meetings are extremely helpful, including tonight, because I've never left a meeting with a neighborhood group or with a public meeting without an idea that we didn't think of. Of course, I tell my architects I should have thought of it, but they can't get everything. So, and as we go to the next slide, you can see the continuation of this process. We're here tonight for the first community meeting. We are certain there'll be another community meeting. We will also always entertain any individual meetings with local buildings, local businesses. Anybody who wants to talk to us, you saw my email is on the front page of this presentation. I'm available. We will talk to anybody. As a neighbor, as a resident of this city, as a business owner in this city, you're entitled to have your say. We might not always like what you say, and you might not always like what I say. But we will always agree that we're going to build something terrific. We're going to build something special, and we're going to build something that lasts. And at the end of the day, in most cases, and I've done this for a long time now. I've never done this virtually, which is not as much fun. But in most cases, when the project is finished, I've had our neighbors come up to us and say, you know what, you were right. It really is a great addition. And by the way, you did exactly what you said you were going to do. And that is something we will always do. But as you can see, there's still many steps ahead of us, and we will follow that timeline. So why do we call it North Union? Well, we are the Union. So we're on the north side, and this is the union of many vibrant and incredible neighborhoods, as well as future neighborhoods, former and future neighborhoods. The former Cabrini Green site, which is ripe for future development. Depending on what that use is, we don't know what that will be, but it will happen. There's a break in the link between River North, Old Town, the former Cabrini Green, and the Gold Coast. And you can see the light area in between the purple is our site, and it's the hole in the donut. River North has experienced tremendous development, as has Old Town and even the Gold Coast. So we want to connect everything, and you'll see a very strong sense of pedestrian and neighborhood type feel as we present this project. It's a unique site in that it is located in the middle of a tremendous amount of transportation. We have a red line stop, we have a purple and brown line stop, both in walking proximity to the site. Multiple bus lines. We have a bike lane, one of the first bike lanes that was built along Wells Street, heavily active. And We also have divvy stations. So there are many ways to get around. That doesn't mean we're not building parking. That doesn't mean we don't expect cars. We have to build the parking. You know, it's always a double-edged sword. How many cars are you going to build? Are you going to build 1-to-1? Are you going to build 50, 0.5 to 1? Back when I started in this business, it was 2 to 1. The city insisted you have to have enough parking. Now we're at 0.5 to 1, which is what we've settled on. We will evaluate that as we go, and you'll see we're building this in phases. It will give us the opportunity to determine what has happened with transportation, what has happened with, how are people really commuting in 3 years and in 5 years. If we can build less parking, we would be thrilled. At the same time, we have to be respectful of our neighbors. If we underpark the site, that doesn't mean people won't have cars. They take street parking that people need for guests, that people need for, businesses need for visitors. So it's always a balance. The Alderman did mention, while this is a master plan, it is going to be built in phases. We believe 5 phases. The first phase you can see is at the south end of the site. It fronts Wells Street on the east and Franklin Street on the west. The first building, 878 North Wells, that we believe will be the first building that we will construct, 389 total dwelling units. You'll see a note in every one of these slides about how many affordable units we have. And that is technology. That is something we'll talk about later because it's a very important aspect of what we're doing. As you go around this site, the next building, 232 Wells, and this is a great opportunity to talk about how we thought of our neighbor to our south, to Park Chestnut. This building is right across the street from them. As Alderman Burnett said, I don't want to hear about views. We know that's the way it is in the city, and yet we still wanted to be respectful to our neighbors immediately next door. We took this opportunity to build a really unique wood timber loft building here. It's a new technology. There's only a couple built, and we're excited to bring something different. It's a very sustainable product, and it really combines well with the building immediately to its north, 871 North Franklin. Next one. 871 North Franklin, which is actually, this is an existing building. So we are not tearing down any older buildings on this site. We are repurposing all buildings that we feel can add value and have some history. In the case of this building, it was actually where the 1933 World Fair posters were printed. So, almost 100 years ago, this was a pretty unique place. It's a great building, and we really want to keep that brick and loft character along Franklin. It fits with the landscape. This is our first park opportunity, open space park. It should be known, all of our park space, all of our open space is open to the public. This is not a closed community. It's actually an extremely vibrant and open community. So there's the park. That's approximately 20,000 square feet. And it connects to it moves out and weaves through the buildings to the northwest, as well as to the southwest, as well as to the northeast. And you can see a picture of the building that we're retaining and repurposing at the bottom left. Next slide. In all these, as you see this build, you'll notice that while the entirety of this project is large, each phase is really very much in keeping with normal city planning. This location, this site, falls within the DX5 extended downtown zoning district. We're actually building to that DX5. This is not a request to increase our underlying zoning. The reason we're here, the reason we're talking is because we've designed so much of it, because it is a big site. It needs to be a planned development, which is great for the neighbors. It's great for the neighborhood because you get to have your say. But if you broke it down into each individual building, no one building and no one project, until you get to the very end where they get bigger, is really that big. And if you went up and down Wells Street, you'll see a lot of buildings that have been built in the last 8 or 9 years that are substantially larger than anything we're presenting on Wells Street here. And you'll see in the background, the orange, those buildings that are outlined in orange. There are actually 3 buildings that we are going to save and repurpose. And you'll see those as we move further into in the presentation. Only one of them is technically orange rated, which is when the city has determined that it needs to be evaluated before it can be torn down. The other 2 are not, but we feel that they would be and they should be. So we are volunteering to save those. Actually, it was planned from the beginning. Here you see a blow up of the 20,000 square foot park. As I said, it's an open space. It will have water and public art features. You can see at the bottom, these curb lanes we're proposing, we haven't gotten CDOT's approval on this yet, but we're hoping to create slow down curbs at every corner. These are short streets. These streets actually don't, in most cases, they all dead end either to the east or the west. And so there's no reason for people to be flying down the street. We're creating some tabletop street paving across Locust where we can create a pedestrian connection. Sophie, maybe you can point to that. This is a slightly raised area. It does two things. It creates a different pavement pattern to encourage walking. It also creates a natural speed bump without one of the big yellow speed bumps. So moving on to the next phase. Phase two, and you'll see there's a rhythm to this. We are building in order. Again, not any one building on the site is very big. The first building to be built here at, click on it, Sophie, at 920 North Wells, it's a 15-story building. So when we said we were considerate of our neighbors immediately to our south, we also thought about our neighbors to the east. You have 2 West Delaware, 9 West Walton, and 30 West Oak. 30 West Oak doesn't get much of a view of this, but those are the westernmost neighbors, and they're actually only as far west as Dearborn, but you have a park in between, and you have a lot of low-level buildings in between. But we felt that we wanted to also respect their views and their sightlines. And as you build around here, the next building is actually, Moody Bible currently has a large athletic facility on this site. It's way too large for their current needs. So that will be part of the demolition. We will, however, replace it with a small functional facility for their use. And then going again to the west, another building that reflects the character of Franklin Street. And you can see it, it's hard to see, it's in the second box on the bottom. More of a terracotta look, it won't be real terracotta because after hundreds of years of buildings being built in Chicago with terracotta, it's a material that doesn't really hold up in our climate, but it is quite beautiful. So we want to certainly provide that look. Next to that, you will have another one of the buildings that we're saving. And then we are doing a lot of low density development in here as well. We want to create a family environment. So these are actually some single family homes that will be inserted in this spot. One of the buildings, the first building, is actually the orange rated building. It will be repurposed either as a single family home or as as a business use or some sort of market or retail use, but it will remain as is. It's a magnificent building. As you go to the next phase, as we build this phase, so this will give you an idea of how this will build. This is going to happen over time. It's going to happen, organically. It's going to happen based on the market. And, I think we all should hope that this market, that the demand for this is strong. Everybody who lives in this neighborhood, while you might think that, developers are the devil, actually what we're doing is ensuring that this neighborhood is vibrant and continues to grow. We want people to live here. Every time you build new, the buildings around you get brought up with you. And right now, prices are depressed, rents are depressed. There's no question. This is an unprecedented time in our history, in the real estate history of Chicago. In some ways, it's almost worse than 2008 because it just happens so quickly, and it is also personally affecting so many lives. But people will come back downtown. You can quote me. This is being recorded, so I'm telling you, people are going to move back downtown, and we want to make this a very vibrant neighborhood. So here you'll see some connection spaces. There are actually some existing alleys. We want to use those not only for, in some cases, vehicles, but we also want to use it for pedestrian connections from our parks and from our streetscape. So you'll see you'll see to the east and to the west of the purple single family homes, connecting alleys that will be lit and will be designed for pedestrians as well as for car traffic. Phase 3 is when we get into one of our larger buildings. This building is actually planned to be we hope, and again, market's going to drive this, a combination of rental and condo. It's 340 total dwelling units. What's nice about it is, while it's a fairly large building, these are large units. We are promoting families being here and living here. There are some concerns about the school system. Can it handle how many kids live here? Unfortunately, we don't think there will be that many families here and that many kids here. And quite frankly, one could argue that we're concerned that there are going to be enough kids in the city to support the schools that Chicago has spent so much money building and improving. And, we can be very proud, certainly, of the schools in this neighborhood. And I think it should be, a building block for all the neighborhoods of this city. But offsetting the larger building along Wells Street, right behind it, we've actually introduced 24 townhomes. Again, trying to get families, in a perfect world, if we were able to draw the pretty picture with rainbows and flowers, we would have, a family walking down the street with a stroller and a dog, maybe 2 dogs, and, walking to some of the cafes that will exist in the bases of these buildings along Wells Street, or the market that we're going to try to promote, some sort of fresh market type of user. We don't know who the users are yet. It's too early. We're a long way out, but we are going to control who goes into these commercial spaces, because this is all about the neighborhood. This is all about the uses. The retail, fortunately for us, is not driving the economics here. So we can be very choosy. We can hopefully work with local vendors and local store owners and local restaurateurs that need the opportunity. And as we build this, you can see how it starts to fill in. You do get a taller building along Oak Street. Oak and Wells is a really important street. It's a vibrant corner. It's the calling card. It's the entrance to the Gold Coast. It's the entrance to River North. It's the entrance to Old Town. It's at some level. So, and you'll see later, why we have approached Oak Street with this building, we're also being very, we have taken great pains to affect this as a pedestrian walking type of environment. Here you see the greenway coming across even further. So there's actually a greenway that connects all the way from Chestnut to Oak Street. And then you have the green path through the townhomes. Nothing is gated. The townhomes obviously will have their own front lawns, but nothing is shut off. This must be part of the community. And then the final phase, and actually the part that you see there probably will not be the final phase. I think we'll probably build it much earlier. Is actually another 20,000 square foot green space. It will be a great lawn, as well as a large section of it, but will be utilized for playground equipment. There certainly is demand for a kids playground. And again, we're promoting families. Whether they're living here or living 2 blocks away, families need somewhere to go. 6 more townhomes. So we're, again, maintaining that low density in the middle of this project, keeping the lower density along Franklin Street. And then 305 West Oak, the furthest west building, 312 West Walton Street. That actually lands on the L track. So you can see it in the bottom left corner. The L tracks in Chicago, like them or not, they're iconic. They're famous for the movies they've been in. And so we didn't want to necessarily ignore them, but we did want the architecture of that building to blend with it. And so we made a more structurally, more steel structural looking building. Obviously, it has to be acoustically sound in order to be livable on the tracks. And we're fortunate that with today's technology, that's very manageable. So you'll see as we build that we're now building to the west and continuing around the site. And you can certainly see the large green spaces that, unfortunately, the one to the south is buried behind the building, but large green spaces that begin to appear. Here's a blow up of the park. Again, highlighting the fact that will be a playground as well as a great lawn. These parks these aren't athletic parks. There are certainly athletic choices, and we are within a community, but they are parks for, sitting and reading a book. Hopefully they will be engaged. Certainly the other park will be engaged along with a cafe that will allow seating and dining outdoors. It's become very popular lately. I think that's probably going to be that way for a long time. And it also, this great lawn also provides yet another connection between Walton and Oak Street. There is no car traffic here. This street doesn't exist today. We're not removing a street. Franklin has never run through, and we want to keep it that way. And then the final phase, and this is the largest phase, the density here is it's almost probably 40% of the overall density. So for those that think, hey, we can't absorb all this product right now, this product isn't going to be built for probably 7 to 9 years. We don't actually know when it will be built, but that is the phasing we're thinking of. But it's also where the density belongs. It's against the L tracks. It is it's proximate with other tall buildings. It doesn't overpower Wells Street, which, Wells Street doesn't have any really tall buildings. And so, this is the final phase. The 2 buildings, we've actually been asked by some, here's a chance to build tall, iconic towers. Can't you go taller? We probably think we've gone tall enough. And my guess is that many in the neighborhood would agree. And, we think it is the right height. It's slightly taller than the buildings just to our north. But it also creates a landmark for the end of Franklin Street as you're approaching Franklin from Chicago Avenue. Next slide. One of the things that we all know, if you live in this neighborhood, there is no dog park. It's a problem. We have Washington Square Park. It's a magnificent park. The group that runs that has done an incredible job of keeping it up. It's not an off-leash dog park. That doesn't mean people don't let their dogs off leash, but it's not an off-leash dog park. And it's also not large enough to handle all the dogs. Especially what's happened the last, 7-8 months, everybody's staying at home, they're all getting dogs. So we need an outlet. I as I mentioned, happen to live just a couple blocks from here. I have 2 dogs and there's nowhere to go. So we've dedicated over 26,000 feet of land, and it's been done in a way where it's contiguous and it fits in with our landscape. And it requires us to really do some extremely detailed landscaping because it is part of our exposure. It's part of our entrance to our building. So and that is immediately next to a very large motor court that will take cars off the street to service these buildings. This will be our 3rd motor court building, and one of them is up and running, proven to be very successful. One Chicago, it was the linchpin to getting that deal approved. You've got to get cars off the street. The issue today isn't really people driving, it's pick up and drop off. People that are driving, they get in their car, they leave the garage and they go. But, the pickup and drop off is a real problem, especially when you have, about 1,000 units in these 2 buildings. You've got to have somewhere, you need to have an outlet. So we've got about 19,000 square foot auto court. And we have the final phase of the build. They're not as easy to build as this. It takes a little longer. So there will be some construction traffic. There will be some aggravation, but at the end of the day, this is what you'll be getting. And as we said, every building is unique. Every building has its own character, fits within the landscape of the surrounding environment. Here's a blow up of the dog park. You'll see we actually understand dogs. So we have a small dog park as well as a as well as a large dog park. Some small dogs think they're big and some big dogs think they're small, but they need to go where they belong and they need to be safe. This will be a gated area for safety for the dogs. Obviously, I think as we mentioned, all of the parks will actually be fenced. They will be open at all regular hours to the public. So we will control it. We will manage it. It'll be privately managed. These are not city parks, but it will be dictated that these parks will remain public. But we can set the hours that we close. So we might close at 9 o'clock at night, as opposed to a city park that might close at 11, or we might stay open later. We have that flexibility, but we will never be open only to our residents and not to the public. So here's the overall site and plan. And what you see, the arrows popping up really highlight all the pedestrian walking paths. And there are many. You can go from the northeast corner of Oak and Wells, walk through our site and come out on the Franklin at Franklin and Chestnut on the southwest. You walk through green space, you walk through parkways, you walk through plazas. You can't see it in these pictures. All the buildings along Wells have plazas and open spaces at the first floor, allowing merchants outdoor uses, outdoor seating. Farmers markets, if available, could go on some of the green lawns. And so, this is, if you look at going north and you look at going south and west and east, this truly connects all of these neighborhoods, not just by car. And so we are promoting walking. Obviously, it's a bike path. So it's a critical aspect of this development. And then this is, I've been doing this for a few years now, and cars and traffic are always the number one concern after views, but all the neighbors have gotten really smart and they know that the city's not going to listen to your view concerns. We listened, even though you didn't say it, and took those into account. But we do know that cars and traffic are incredibly important. We think we've done a great job over the years of managing this on our own property. And we've worked with our traffic consultant. We certainly worked with CDOT and the city, and we're continuing to refine this. But what you'll see is that the purple arrows represent ingress and egress into our garages. With all the buildings that we have, you don't see a lot of purple arrows. So in phase one, for example, that is one access point, ingress and egress, for the parking for all three buildings. There are no other curb cuts. You'll see no curb cuts along Wells Street. We definitely don't want to intrude on the bike lanes or in any of the pedestrian walkways. As you come over to the next site, to the middle site, there are existing alleys there. You'll see the blue lines, the blue arrows. We will utilize those alleys. We're actually going to widen the alley on the east to make it drivable and to make it usable only for cars and for walking, to access the parking for all of those buildings. There is one other small access point on the Franklin Street side for the final building. What's important to note here isn't only how few points we have, but where do they exit? So if you're leaving 909 North Franklin Street, you're exiting onto Franklin. You're going to go south over to Chicago Avenue. You can come over to Locust and make a left and go over to Wells. Locust is a dead end street at Wells. Most of these small east-west streets are dead end streets. So we're really hoping to push the traffic south. Chicago Avenue is a larger street. Wells Street is actually a very good transfer street, especially because it becomes one way as you get a few blocks south. The other phase, as you go to the next phase to the south, you'll see we have also, this curb cut and this access point will actually handle the parking, not only for the building, but we're taking the parking for the townhomes underground. So we've decided to build that green space on top of parking. We don't want to see the parking. That's the other issue. There are very few parking podiums on this entire site. We've done it elsewhere. We're doing it here. We will go through the expense. We will take that construction risk to push the parking underground so that it doesn't create any sort of block views, doesn't create any sort of obstructions at the street. And then as you go west, as we get near Oak Street, I have, as I've mentioned probably more times than everybody wants to hear, I do live here. I'm very much aware of the traffic patterns. Oak Street is a narrow street. It's a two-way street. And we've actually redone this plan a number of times. We recently came up with what we think is a plan that works. The only ingress and egress combination on Oak Street is for the motor court. And that motor court does not give you access to the garage. So that is only for pickup and drop off and for deliveries, food deliveries. If you go over to 312 West Walton, the only access to that site comes in off of Walton Street. And again, Walton Street is a dead end street going east. So if most likely you're going to go west to Orleans, go down Franklin, and then you'll see another small access point just for the 6 townhomes. The big density is to the northwest. Those buildings they obviously will have the most number of cars, although by the time we build it, maybe we don't need them. Maybe people will be flying, be the Jetsons, but we doubt that. So There's actually an pretty much an abandoned street. It's there. It's not used. It dead ends Wendell Street. We're going to repurpose that and use it for our ingress and egress for that parking garage, so that cars are going to be forced out to Wells and to Orleans, really promoting keeping cars off of Oak Street. If somebody wants to go east, if the traffic isn't bad, they'll use Oak Street, but they have options, and there's no reason to use Oak Street. They have direct access to Division Street to the north, Chicago Avenue to the south. So this shows a couple of things. It's a contextual map trying to highlight, how we determine where the buildings would go. As you can see, Old Town Park is up to the north, and those are taller high rises. That's why we located our taller high rises in a similar location. Ours are also on the L tracks, so again, it makes sense. As you start down to the 2021 building, these numbers are actually calendar years. So this is the proposed phasing for this project. So for those that say, hey, we can't have 2,600 units tomorrow, well, we can't. What's interesting is that as a total metric, 2,600 units in the city of Chicago is typically in a typical year is about 6 months supply of new product. We're not going to see that this year, and we certainly demand is down. But as I started with, I'm hopeful that demand comes back and we're going to need the product, and we will build as it's needed. So we wanted to give you some context. What is this going to look like? Right now, it's all low-level buildings, many of which are not not heavily used. There's parking lots, there's open lots, there's open space, and you have the Solheim Center, and you do have a soccer field at the north end. Look at the buildings around you. Look at the context. Park Chestnut, which is right at the bottom of the slide. And then all the buildings to the east, you can see the scale, you can see the sizes, the buildings to the north. So as you populate our buildings, we like to think it looks like it's been there forever. And as we do it in phases, we think that it will look like it belongs and it's been there forever. We'll show you a couple more views of the same concept. You'll also see on each one, go ahead. You will see a lot of green roofs. This plays into the whole our sustainability concerns. So every building will have a green roof. They're also great to look on if you're a neighbor and you do happen to look down on the building. Again, not too many around here that would happen. You'd actually have to go 3 or 4 blocks east to get to a building that would be tall enough to look down on these. And we have one more view. Oh, that's the last view. So, we talked about Chicago. We talked about why do we need this? A lot of neighbors are going to say we don't need it, but Chicago does. Chicago needs this, badly. One of the things that I hear every time I'm talking to the capital markets, what about the financial situation in Chicago? We have struggles, and this pandemic has not helped. We need to build our way out. We need to create economic benefits from everything that we do. Development has always been a great driver of that. This property is unique in that it's a very large piece of property in a very powerful setting that actually pays almost no taxes currently. When this is built, and this is not even assuming what taxes might be in 10 years, this property will generate over $20 million in taxes a year. So for those of you that are concerned about your tax bill, you need other taxpayers. And this is a huge commitment. This is a tremendous amount of tax. Just to be clear, we specifically did not use the word an incremental or increment. There is no TIF on this project. There is no public funding. This is 100% private. And, I've been asked that question a couple of times. I know other projects have used TIF. There's a place for it. Not here. Because it's a phased project, there's going to be 8 to 10 years of construction with 500 to 1,000 construction workers working every year. Those are great paying jobs. Right now, or a year ago, you would have said, well, we have too much construction. A year from now, we're going to be in desperate need of construction. And the other thing is, when this is done, we'll have over 400 permanent jobs, from security to door staff to maintenance to leasing to management, plus some of the retail users. I'm not even counting those. And again, reiterating, there is no public funding. Other public benefits, infrastructure improvements. Whenever we do a project, and when we did One Chicago just a few blocks away, there's always a wish list, which isn't a wish list because their wishes always come true, from CDOT of what the developer can do to make things better. So we are certain there will be an addition of stop signs and traffic signals. We've suggested the slowdown curbs. Very often you reach out even further and rework stop signs and stoplights, not in this immediate area. So we work with CDOT very closely. They manage the traffic. We do what they tell us. You're going to get over 2 acres of publicly accessible open space. This is over 25% of our land is being committed to open space, between the dog park, the public art park, kids park, et cetera, as well as all the green pathways. We've had some issues in the city as of late. It's unfortunate. I'm hoping that they're past, but civil unrest, crime, people are scared. Empty land doesn't help that. We need to get eyes on the street. We need to get buildings active. We need lights on. We need people walking around. That's what makes places safer. And then from a sustainability standpoint, we are seeking a LEED neighborhood. This will be a LEED neighborhood development, which is beyond just LEED. So it goes to many other things than just some of the typical standards. The paving for the alleys, for example, will be permeable paving, allowing water to move through it. We will exceed the energy code by over 10%, reducing indoor water usage, diverting construction waste from landfills by 80%. There will be a substantial amount of bike parking. Along with pets, I think bikes are probably the second most prevalent increase during this last 6 or 7 months. And then electric car charging it's just a wave of the future. I'm sure there will be mandates coming from the city and from the state that over the next X number of years, 10, 15, 20, 25, that you're going to have an electric car. And Alderman Burnett mentioned this, and NUP I know has significant concerns about this. We're proud to say that we came up with this program prior to talking to any of them. And as a developer who's done a lot of other residential projects, I'm the first to tell you that I probably avoided affordable housing, and I shouldn't have. As the city created new programs, developers found loopholes, they accelerated things to avoid having to do it. We did have a great affordable housing program that worked out on One Chicago, where we were able to support the Lawson and actually work with them to create some really needed housing. But here we came to the Alderman, so we want to build affordable housing on site. By requirement, we only have to build 25%. We want to build almost the full 10% requirement that is actually the underlying requirement. It's not the full amount of the affordable that we're doing, but we wanted to make a statement that we're building these on site and we're building them within each building. We're not separating anything. Everybody's going to live with each other. We're hopeful that with 400 jobs on site, maybe we can even create a program where people that maybe can't quite meet the cost of even an affordable unit can get a job within our property that would allow them to have the income so that they could also live in that property. As I mentioned, they all are distributed amongst the property. Our units in general are much larger. These are not 600 square foot apartments. I think we average well over 900 square foot per unit. Because we do have so many family size units, this will be the same for the affordable units and for the inclusionary housing. And then, the affordable rents will be reserved. The other issue, we will be committing $21 million to ARO and to offsite units. And lastly, we've made a pledge. This is not a requirement, and you can certainly read this at your own leisure. But we need to get people working in this city. There are neighborhoods that have young people that can't get jobs. They're not trained. They don't have the education. So this is a comprehensive program that not only provides money for training programs, but requires subcontractors and contractors on this job site to hire people that need these jobs that in the past would have never qualified for them. They have to help with the training. There's a financial commitment at every level. And we have selected a number of groups that can train young people in these disadvantaged neighborhoods so that they can get an opportunity.
Okay, thank you so much, Jim. We're going to go to the Q&A portion of the presentation. So first, I'll hand it over to Michelle Drasinski from the Near North Unity Program. She has a few questions to ask your team.
Hi, Jim. Thank you so much. That was a great presentation. We're so excited you're coming to our community. One of the questions our community had is, what will the continuity of ownership for the land in the planned development be? Will Moody or will JDL own the land, and for how long? And when each phase is completed, will those buildings from those completed phases be sold to another party to finance the next phase of the PD? And if the ownership were to be transferred for any reason, will there be language in the purchase contract that creates an ownership obligation for the adherence of conditions in the PD that are being decided on now?
Hopefully I get all your, if I miss one of your questions, I'll get to it. This land is being purchased by JDL. Moody Bible will not have any interest in the future once we conclude that. It is our hope, and I can't say it's going to happen, that we will build each one of these phases and we will own each one of these phases. We will utilize the success of each phase to build the next phase, but not by sale. We hope just by recapitalizing it and continuing to reinvest. I can't tell you, I probably can tell you that over the life of this project, whether it's 10 years or 20 years, there could be different owners, of the entire property or individual buildings, but any owner will absolutely be committed to follow this PD. They will have to maintain the parks. There will be a sharing agreement. There will be, any agreement necessary, every legal agreement will be created, because we are going to own some of this, and we need that certainty just like everybody else does.
Thank you.
Jim, I have the next question. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. And the next question is, are you having an active conversation with the city and CTA about community transportation needs and the increase of people in the area who may benefit from the addition of a Division Street Brown Line stop?
Cindy, you want to take
Yeah,
that?
I can answer that. I mean, DPD and the Department of Transportation, CDOT, we do coordinate for all of our plan development projects with the CTA staff. And they did have a response to this question. So I'll read it on behalf of CTA. CTA has identified this previously as a potential infill station location. However, no funding and no conceptual design work has been performed. Building a station at this location would be complex due to the curve that's immediately south of Division. It is yet to be determined if there is a suitable stretch of straight track north of the curve where an infill station could be located. Since the Brown Line project was completed in 2009, ridership has grown substantially along the Brown Line, as many of you have experienced. And it is now at capacity. This is pre-COVID capacity numbers. And the Sedgwick station is currently the peak loading point for the Brown Line in the morning rush hour. So that would mean that passengers at a potentially new Division station would likely experience full trains and have difficulty boarding due to capacity constraints. So additional investments in the Brown Line capacity would likely be needed in order to accommodate new riders during CTA's peak periods during the rush hour. So
okay, thank you, Cindy. Yes, thank you very much. And I believe Michelle is going to have our next question.
Just another question, Jim. There's a lot of density on the northwest side of the development, and the community was wondering if it was at all possible to locate more density along the eastern edge of the property on Wells Street.
the answer is always you can, we can do anything. We don't feel that the density belongs on Wells Street just because it really is not contiguous with Wells Street going, all the way from North Avenue, over to Illinois Street. We've tried to keep the buildings along Wells Street more in keeping with the neighborhood. And, we wanted to actually push the density off of some of the main arteries, keep them, be able to manage our traffic independently.
Thank you.
Okay, and then the next question, a couple questions from Susan Morrow at River North Residents Association. Susan? Susan, we can't hear you yet.
Whoops, sorry about that.
Oh, great.
Sorry.
Now we can hear you.
Usually not something you have to worry about with me. Jim, thanks again so much for meeting with us a few times already. A couple of questions that I wanted to add in. One was, what is the plan in terms of cannabis dispensaries, bars, any of that on this area that you are buying from Moody?
They are actually expressly prohibited. So there will not be a bar. There will be restaurants serving alcohol, but it has to, their primary source of income has to be from food.
Terrific. Another question. We've had some concern from some neighbors about the buildings that face onto Wells Street. What will you be doing about loading and unloading, especially with all of Ubers and things like that, since there's a bike lane there?
So loading will be on the sides of those buildings. It'll be located on Locust Street, as well as on Walton Street. In some cases, there's actually off-site loading and pickup, but in those cases, there will be pickup and drop off on those side streets.
So the entrances to the buildings will not be actually on Wells Street.
There will be entrances on Wells Street, but they will be crafted either towards Locust or towards Walton, so that we can't have pickup and drop off on Wells Street.
No, people were very worried about that. And then one other question is, in terms of the dog park, the new dog park looks amazing, but that's actually in phase 5. Would you be willing to look at building a temporary dog park once you're doing phase 1 so that the other local park is not overrun by dogs that are moving into the neighborhood? Would you consider building that park in advance?
Yes, as we finish phase 1, I think there will be opportunities it won't be a real pretty dog park, but we will make facilities available, possibly even a temporary playground as we wait to do the next phases.
Terrific. Thanks, Jim. Really appreciate it. Have a great night.
Okay, thank you so much, Susan. Okay, the next question that we received is in such a transit accessible location in the site, why include so many 1,600 plus car parking spaces in this development? Why not make this a great example of how large transit-oriented development project can be for everyone?
I think I addressed it a little bit in the presentation. Just to touch on that, I don't know where the 1,600 cars came from. I think we probably will have around 1,300 cars at max. And again, it's a fine balance. Just not building parking doesn't mean that people won't have cars. One of the things that we see in this neighborhood, a lot of people have cars. They don't use them all the time. They might take them out on the weekends, but they do need parking. You also have, as I mentioned, you can't put people in a position where you don't build parking and then they start taking street parking that neighbors have been using for years.
Great. Okay. And is the redevelopment project planning to include bicycle parking in a 1-to-1 ratio of housing units as well? The location on or within blocks of existing bicycle lanes makes this a perfect place for renters or owners of the redevelopment to use this existing infrastructure. Are any new bicycle infrastructure planned for this project?
We don't have any new bicycle infrastructure plans. Wells Street's it's a great artery. We will have 1-to-1 bike parking on this project, as well as located bike parking for those people visiting outside.
Great. And has an area traffic study been done from Orleans to Lake and Division to Superior?
It is in process. We have a lot of empirical data because we built almost everything in this neighborhood. So, but we are compiling that and studying that.
Okay, and your commitment to green space and providing playgrounds for the young families where dogs would not be allowed has been a question that has been asked as well.
Been asked that a lot myself. You know, the big problem right now is that you don't have anywhere for the dogs to go. So they go where they're not supposed to. We think we're going to create a substantial outlet for dog owners so that they don't need to break the rules and let dogs off leash in parks that aren't supposed to have dogs. I'm not going to tell, you know, I don't know that we're going to tell somebody that if you're going to sit at a cafe and it's within a park, that you can't have your dog, you know, sit with you. It's a popular thing to do today. But the dogs certainly they will not be allowed off leash. And in most cases, probably there'll be no dogs allowed other than the dog park.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to hand all over the question asking to Emily.
Hi, the next question is, how can the infrastructure sustain the addition of a development with 2,600 plus additional units?
I'm not sure which infrastructure we're talking about, but we're actually building within an existing city grid. So again, 2,600 units sounds like a tremendous amount of new product. But if you took, for example, the 3 blocks from Superior to Ontario along Wells Street, there were over 1,200 units built there in a 3-year period. It didn't take any toll on the infrastructure of the city or the neighborhood. We have the same opportunity here. This neighborhood, the grid is set. And again, we're building to the DX5. We're building to the underlying zoning.
The next couple questions I have relate to the jobs or economy. The next one is, will there be any opportunities for minority-owned real estate brokerages to partner with the developers to list and sell these units? If so, what is the process for applying for this opportunity?
We're going to provide an opportunity for minority owners of every aspect of this, as well as minority workers. So there is no process for it right now. We're a long way from selling or buying anything. But again, my website, my email address is on this. Please reach out for me. We will open discussions. We will find opportunities for as many people as we can.
The next one I have is, how are you ensuring economic diversity in this development and not only creating a development for those with well-paying jobs?
Well, as I mentioned, we're building 236 affordable units on site. They will be mixed within every one of the properties. You know, there will be market rate units. I don't know what market rate is today. And we're also hoping to create well-paying jobs for some people that maybe couldn't have otherwise afforded even the affordable units.
When there are so many apartment and condo vacancies combined with a poor outlook for people moving into urban areas, why is this being considered?
Because I'm an optimist, because I believe that, you know, this is temporary and people are moving back to the city. Who doesn't want to live in the city under good times? We're going through a tough time. If you live here right now, and I own apartment buildings, we are suffering from vacancies. It hurts. I know those people are coming back. You know, they moved in with their parents. Maybe they've lost their job. Maybe they just have moved, you know, out to the suburbs because right now they can't go and enjoy the bars and restaurants of the area. They can't go to their office. But if you're going to your office 5 days a week, you're going to be living back downtown because you don't want to drive into the city. You want to use the public transportation. You want to ride your bike. So I'm cautiously optimistic. I've been wrong many times before, but I just believe in the city. And we're also building in multiple phases. We're not dropping 2,600 units on this neighborhood next year. You know, we're going to build 400 units over the next 2.5 years.
Thank you. The next question I have is, are the commercial spaces reasonably priced so we do not end up with a bunch of empty storefronts?
As I think I mentioned, we haven't priced the commercial space, but the commercial space is really all about amenity. So we're going to price it wherever we need to get them filled with great restaurants, with great shops, possibly, you know, some sort of market type setting, coffee shops. So we're not actually focused on the rents on those. We are focused on creating a neighborhood.
Great, thank you. So the next batch of questions are mostly related to site planning and design and programming of the site. So I'll start with the first one. Why not place any necessary car parking underground and eliminate or minimize ugly blank walls that create dangerous alleyways that only serve utilitarian purposes?
I think it's a great idea. We'll build a lot of it underground. A substantial amount of the parking is built underground. The only above ground parking is located really on the west side of the property, the northwest side, tucked under the L tracks.
Thank you. This is a comment question. I was under the impression that the lot right next to Walter Payton High School was going to the school. They are in desperate need of an outdoor space field for the students. Should this not be a priority?
Well, there's two lots there. There's a soccer field that's been owned by Moody Bible for a long time. And then there's a baseball field. So the baseball field will remain. It's nothing to do with this deal. The soccer field was actually not open to the community or to the park, to any other schools. It was strictly for the use of Moody Bible before. So we're not taking anything away that the neighborhood had. And the baseball field will remain.
Thank you. What existing buildings will lose views because of the new buildings?
Almost none. And we think that's really important. As I mentioned, there's buildings to the east. They are over 3 miles away. So that doesn't necessarily lead to losing your view. But most of the buildings to the east are looking at buildings that are going to be 15 or 20 stories tall. The most impacted building, Park Chestnut, is going to have a 6-story building across from it. So it will lose almost no views.
Thank you. And then has the city developer architect looked into different varying heights for the 3 proposed towers?
The 3 towers are varying heights. The 2 towers to the northwest are close in height because we actually find that those are kind of a twin tower, but even those vary. The towers along Wells Street, I guess tower is an undefined term, but every tower is a different height. And we have a lot of buildings that we wouldn't even call towers. They're 15 stories or 21 stories. So I think every building varies in height.
Okay, and then just a follow up to that question, can there be an investigation into increasing these heights for better visual prominence?
I love that question because I like building tall buildings. I think for this neighborhood, we've probably taken it to the height that makes sense. They will be iconic and they will have prominence because while they're not anywhere near the tallest buildings in the city or even the neighborhood, they certainly are for that immediate location. So they will be visible from a lot of different areas.
Thank you. And then will there be a signature tower to create a visual landmark for the Franklin Street, Clybourne Avenue view corridor?
I believe the twin towers in the northwest corner will first of all be an anchor to the Franklin Street view corridor, looking from the south, looking north. And certainly coming down Clybourne, they should be a calling card for as far as a view.
All right, and then I just have one other question, not related, I guess, to the proposal itself, but it says, what are the chances this planned development will be within the boundary of one ward after redistricting in 2021? I can answer that. We don't have an answer for that question at this point. There hasn't been any determination about ward reboundaries. I don't know if anyone else has anything to add, but I think that covers all our questions we received in advance.
Yeah, thank you, Emily. I'll start with the questions where we need to answer from the Q&A that haven't been responded to yet. What's the, Jim, what's the budget or investment for this project? Do you have a number?
It's about a $1.3 billion investment.
1.3 billion?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not even hard for me to say. But again, over many, many years.
Right, over many years. And because you're creating a dog park for dog owners in the area, oh, the question just left. When will you procure construction GC services?
When are we going to get our PD approved? I think we will be engaging that process hopefully in the next 6 months. And we do have a GC that we probably will work with that we have tremendous experience with, but it is our goal to combine that GC with a minority GC.
Okay, great. Are there other ways to minimize the cavernous effect for Walter Payton School? There's just some concern about the density surrounding the school.
So we've actually moved the buildings around along the northwest side in order to avoid that. The baseball field, there is a building immediately across the street to the south. That building is very shallow from east to west. And so the baseball field actually will still, and the school will still get tremendous light. By building the dog park and pushing the buildings as we did to the northwest, we've actually created more than the width of a normal street between us and Walter Payton.
Okay, so I think that we're done with our questions. I want to thank everyone. Thank you, Jim and your team, for presenting tonight. Thank you, Alderman Burnett. Thank you, Alderman Hopkins. Thank you to the Near North Unity Program, River North Residents Association. Hopefully this has been an informative webinar for everyone. And I also want to remind folks that if you have any follow-up questions or comments, you can email them to dpd@cityofchicago.org or your ward offices, or Jim directly, jim@jdlcorp.com, correct?
Yes.
Yep. And you can email, right, you can email all of us at the same time if that's your preference, or email directly to one of those three options is fine as well. Thank you so much for joining us this evening, and stay safe and healthy, everyone.
Thank you.